Probably the hardest thing in the world is just to show up. Not showing up when you're motivated, not showing up when you're inspired, but just showing up. My mom always taught me from a very early age that, just show up and give God room to surprise you. Leave him room. Don't have everything so planned out that it has to go this way, because most of the time it won't go that way. Then we get disappointed. When we get disappointed from our silly decisions, then guess what? We blame them on God. Oh, God, why did you do this to me? And he's laughing, saying, no, you made these decisions, and how are you going to get mad at me for your silliness in your life? And so my mom would always say, just give him room. Give him room to bless you. And imagine if we gave him room to bless us. His blessing is so much greater than anything we could ever even imagine. We talked about yesterday about the daily bread, and it was like talking about just one little step, and he'll never reveal, not never, but most of the time, he won't reveal the next step. He reveals the one that's right in front of you. So he's not going to give you 10 steps and then say, hey, follow all these things, because if he said follow all these things and then this is how your life turns out, we talked about it like, if there was a checklist and it was all the things that was ever going to happen in your life, most likely you would be like, yes, I'll take that. Yes, I'll take that. Yes, I'll take that. No, I won't take that. Won't take that. Won't take that, because it won't be comfortable. But what's amazing is when God asks us just to show up, he doesn't ask us to show up and be ready. He doesn't ask us to show up and be perfect. What he asks us to do is just show up. And then he'll do the work. And when he does the work, guess what? When someone asks, oh my gosh, I can't believe how amazing this was, then you could give the credit right back to him. I was talking with my brother Brad the other day, and he said, man, I would love to be able to educate somebody on my career, because people have asked him in times past. And he said, I can mentor them. They could be around me. I could show them through. But he said, as far as the education part, he's like, what? I had an idea, I prayed about it, and then God blessed me. That's not an educational format. And I said, probably it's the best educational format in the world, because it takes us out of it. It takes our ego out of it and allows God to be the focus. Because if we focus people's eyes towards him, then we'll take the blessing that we have and we'll expand it and give it away onto someone else, which will give us room for God to be able to bless us even more. So today, just show up. In Proverbs 26, it drives this home, and I'm excited to share it with you. So why don't we get this party started?
Nothing more on my mind. I got two shines, so every day I grind. Work in the morning, work in the evening. We's achieving, cause we believing. It's for certain, we put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting. Right before your eyes, so it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised. Over and over and over again. Make no mistake, we continue to win. Defeat never known, cause I will not lose. They wanna mimic my moves, but can't walk in my shoes.
Well, I want to thank you for tuning in and another episode of Inchstones. Imagine this. Imagine you're not motivated, you're not inspired, and you just get up and you show up anyway. And that's when the blessing happens most of the time, because we're out of the way. And when we show up and we're inspired, don't get me wrong, you want to show up during that time too. But I think the most important time is on the Wednesday. It's a Wednesday right now, and you show up to work, and Wednesday is not the most exciting day. It's the middle of the week. They used to call it hump day or whatever it is. And generally Wednesday isn't the day you get super excited about. But imagine showing up on a Wednesday the same way you would show up on a Friday when you were just about to go on a vacation and you were taking a half day. And what God wants us to do is, even when we don't have a reason, he just wants us to show up, because he'll do the work. Sometimes he doesn't want us to be in a situation where, we think, okay, I'm going to show up because I'm going to get X. Sometimes he's going to have you show up and there's not going to be a visible blessing, but he's going to be laying the foundation for a future blessing. And what's amazing is when we go into a daily bread type of situation and we're constantly just looking to him in every single sense, just one, like bit by bit, he keeps us humble. That's the biggest thing. And he keeps us in a point where unless we're locked into him, ain't nothing going to happen anyway. And sometimes, guys, nothing's going to happen. Sometimes you're going to show up, you're just going to show up and nothing at all is going to happen. And my mom used to always tell me this, like, just give him room, like give him room. And by just showing up, we give God room to be able to work. And when he starts to work, it's incredible. Nothing can stop it. So this reminds me of Proverbs 26, which is full of wisdom about what happens when we try and force things in our own strength versus when we let God take the lead. Honor isn't fitting for a fool. That's in verse 1. If you're chasing recognition instead of purpose, we're missing the point. And this is where I've fallen at times in my life, and in business, I've done this where I wanted to gain the world, right? I wanted to gain the world. I want to gain the notoriety of the world. But the people who were around me from the beginning that were saying, yes, we believe, we believe, we believe, sometimes I wasn't focusing in on them. And this is where I failed a lot and started to realize that, you know what, it was so much easier and less expensive as far as time and energy for me to be able to keep and foster the person who was already listening or the person who had already showed up, as opposed to going after all the world, like I said, gain the recognition of the world when I had, these people that believed. And imagine if we just take our energy in a business, if we take our energy on our existing guests that already love what it is that we do, and we pour into them, and then they multiply. My pops talked about it as far as the rule of 10, right? For every one person, 10 comes to you or 10 goes away from you. And it's so simple to be able to multiply a business or multiply a culture simply by focusing on one and making sure that their experience is the best in the world. And in verse 1, honor is not fitting for a fool. What's a fool? A fool is a person that's lacking wisdom. And lacking wisdom, what is wisdom? Wisdom is the fear of God. It's the right use of knowledge, but it comes from the fear of God. So when you're lacking the fear or respect of God, means that you're not spending time with him. When that happens, then honor is not fitting for that person. If we choose to chase recognition instead of purpose, we're just missing the point. In verse 4 and 5, know when to engage and when to let go. The best response is no response. This one is a tough one because there's times where you want to teach somebody a lesson. And I had this happen in my life. A person reached out to me and, they said some stuff that I didn't agree with. And I literally wanted to respond. I wanted to let them know. I sat in it for a second, counted to 10. I still shouldn't have responded. I responded very slightly, but these are things that God has us to do. And so he puts a roadmap in front of us, but he just does one step by one step by one step. In verse 11, don't keep repeating the same mistakes. Growth comes from trust, not control. See, when you trust the people around you, they'll grow. When you control them, they'll shrink. I had this happen with my dog, Skylar. I was walking with her before we got Ziggy. Ziggy's just a whole nother level. That's a whole nother podcast. But Skylar, in her mid-years, I used to have a challenge because I used to have to yank her a lot on the leash and all the stuff. And then one day I just took the leash off and she walked right next to me. And as I walked, she would walk. When I stopped, she would stop. She wouldn't leave my side. But when I was controlling her with the leash, she was constantly resisting. When I took the leash off, what started to happen was she started to grow. See, trust will build and grow people, and control will cause them to shrink back, and most of the time puts an expiration date on them. And, I've learned this from real-time mistakes. In verse 12, thinking you're wise in your own eyes is dangerous. True wisdom comes from surrender. Now, surrender is something that a lot of people have a challenge with, but I learned about this. I was at church one time, and I was just praising God, and with the music, I like to raise my hands, so I raised my hands up, and my pops was right next to me. So I had my hands raised, and then God said, put your hands on top of your head. And I put my hands on top of my head. And then finally, towards the end of the song, God just heard that whisper, just put your hands behind your back. And I sat down, my pops had watched this whole thing, and he's like, what was going on, son? And I said, well, and so I asked God, like, what was that about? And he started to write. First, surrender is raising your hands in the air and saying, that you're giving up control. That you're giving up control and saying, like, hey, I'm in. Like, I'm in. By putting my hands on my head, it was saying, I give you permission to search me. And when you do this, when you're with a police officer, I learned this from police officer friends, hands up, surrender. Hey, I'm giving up. Number 2, put your hands behind or on top of your head. What happened there was, I give you permission to search me for anything that could be harmful to the police officer who was taking me into custody, or is harmful to myself. And then finally, my hands behind my back, it was allowing God to take me into custody. And imagine if we ran down that line, hands up, surrender. Like, hey, I'm giving up. I'm giving up my will. Number 2, I want you to search me, God, for my whole entire body to make sure that I don't have anything that will harm the purpose that you have or harm myself. And hands behind my back, I'm allowing you to take me into custody, and now I'll do exactly what you tell me to do, and that is just to show up. In verse 27, if you dig a pit for someone else, you might fall into it. So move with integrity and let God handle the rest. You see, when we think we have to take it into our own hands, most of the time we're doing ourselves a disservice. And I've had this happen, during the pandemic. We had, we ended up selling our company in the last couple of years, our salons that we had all over the country, Chicago and Vegas and here in Carlsbad. And I remember getting a lawsuit, and the lawsuit came in, and, I wanted to shout my case. I wanted to do all these things, and I wanted to make sure that they knew. And what God was saying is, let me handle it. Let me handle it. Let me handle it. And you know what? He handled it. He handled it. I mean, it was such a blessing. And there's so many times where we think that we need to handle something. We need to show this person or show this other side. And what God is saying is, if you dig a pit for someone else, you might fall into it. So move with integrity and let God handle the rest. He will. Probably one of the hardest things that you'll ever do is in that situation. So I want to thank you if you're listening right now on YouTube and you're tuned in live. It warms my heart. I love you. And I just thank you so much for your attention and for spending time with me this morning. Proverbs 26 is so strong. And today, like, I want to encourage you, if you're live here and you're listening, like, just show up. Like, just show up today. Just show up in your relationship. Don't try and show up perfect. Just show up. Show up to your job. Just show up. Even if you have a bad attitude, just show up and allow God room to be able to bless you. See, all of these points that I've read today has point to one truth. God's ways are higher than ours. He understands things at a level that we don't understand. And especially, he's putting things in line that sometimes if we knew all of the steps, we would mess them up. And he'll give us a vision, but then he'll just give us our daily bread. And that's referred to in Isaiah 55:9, if you want to read that and go back in the notes and do that. And when we stop trying to manipulate the outcome, we give him the space to blow our minds. Today, I want your mind to be blown. Today, I want you to be in a spot where God is like just blows you away completely. But the only way is if we give him room, if we allow him room to be able to bless us. So when people ask, like, imagine this, like the blessing that happens, and we talked about this in men's group yesterday, is most of the time when a blessing happens, we want to turn around and say, okay, this is the way that I did it, these step by step. And I did this for so long because I was very much a systematic guy. And I would systemize things, and that works within a business, which is great. You systemize it, you create a culture. But what I found was the culture had to be alive. So the rules and regulations were nothing more than a list of your screw-ups. So you couldn't They couldn't become your gospel. The rules and regulations could not become your gospel. What the gospel is that you built people and loved people and allowed people to build the business. You see, that became the gospel part of it. And the only way that you could build people is by spending time with them individually and having undivided attention with them and seeing and giving them permission and the freedom to be able to innovate, create new things, and then adapt to it and write it down if they screw up and keep doing it if it works out. And in our men's group yesterday, when I was talking about it, is so many times we systemize things, and then when someone asks us, oh my gosh, how did that blessing happen? We want to break it down and say, okay, you need to do that same thing too. And what God is saying is, no, just direct their eyes to me. Direct their eyes to me. I will give them the daily bread, and then I'll ask them, just give me room to surprise you. But I just need you to show up today. I just need you to show up. As imperfect as you are today, as challenged as you are today, wherever you're at, just show up. And what's incredible is God will bring that joy, and that joy will light people up. I walked downstairs this morning, I saw my son Maddox, and I just said to him, I said, boy, I want you to turn around. He was on his YouTube, scrolling through YouTube shorts. I said, I just want to see your eyes today. He turned around, and I said, I want you to know how much you light up my life, brother. Like just seeing you, you're on fire. Like it lights me on fire. But just showing up is half the battle. It's probably 99% of the battle. So when people ask you, how did that happen, or how did you get that opportunity? The answer isn't the secret formula. It's simply this. We showed up, we trusted, and we let God do what only God can do. And that's the only place any of us need to be focused. I want to thank you for tuning in. Proverbs 26, what I would suggest is that's my interpretation of it. And, it's where my heart was today. I suggest that literally read it. We've got the book coming out. It's The Vibe Within. And it is going to be a journey through Proverbs. Got the corresponding proverb, corresponding day. It's got a journal inside of it. We've been working on it for a year. It's coming out. It's going to be amazing. If you want the production notes, they're handwritten. That's on Substack. You want to come and experience it. It's at the Vibe Experience, April 12th. But my name is Kelly Cardenas, and I'm officially off the hot seat. Peace, love, and soul. Show up.
Achieving, cause we believing it's for certain. We put the work in. We ain't stopped just because it's hurting right before your eyes. So it's coming to no surprise. The takeover is televised over and over and over again. Make